All right, hello everybody. So today we're going to be talking about Aristotle's view of form, and we're also going to be talking about Aristotle's view of change. So recall that we already saw Aristotle's response to Parmenides. He thinks um, that beings can be both, or being can be both actual and potential. And so when being is potential, it can change and become actual, right? So recall that we talked about the baby being courageous or potentially being courageous. And then as a full adult, the baby is able to, or the human is able to actualize its potential to be courageous. So we may wonder, well, how does Aristotle account for change in that way? So we'll see that his view of form and we'll see that his views of change will help give us some guidance on that question. So Plato, recall, he identified form as something that is distinct from the object itself. So remember that Plato thinks, so this is a stapler, right? This stapler has the form of being a stapler, has the form of staplerness, right? But that's because there is some kind of independent idea that is distinct from the stapler that makes this thing a stapler. Okay, so that's the picture that we get from Plato. Now Aristotle denies this. For Aristotle, form is wrapped up in the object, in the individual object. So this thing is a stapler in virtues of actual properties that this stapler has, not something independent of it. So for Aristotle, form is something that's common to all of a kind, right? So, for example, all horses um, are horses in virtue of features that all horses have, right? So, if I have a horse, and I'm looking at it, and I say that this is a horse. It's got features that make it common to all horses, but it's this particular horse's features that make it a horse. So it's a little bit confusing. Basically, the idea here is that form is wrapped up in a given particular object, not something that's independent of the object and abstracted from the object. So the form of a horse is again found in the particular horse itself, not over and above the horse in an immaterial way. Okay. Okay, that leads us to this interesting distinction between two different kinds of changes. So Aristotle says that we can have a substantial change and an accidental change. So the idea here is the um, is what is a substance for Aristotle? Where our book says that a substance is that which a thing is made out of, right? So for Aristotle, substances are mostly living creatures, right? So whether or not um, things like a stapler, whether or not that this is made of a substance, that's like a controversial question. But things like chickens, things like horses, those things are definitely substances and made of substances for Aristotle. So we'll limit our discussion of examples to living beings. So when we have a substantial change, something uh, that comes into or goes out of existence, right? So when we have maybe a baby chicken that's born out of an egg, that is a kind of substantial change, right? So this thing did not exist before, but then all of a sudden does exist. A new substance is coming into being. This living being did not exist before and it's coming to exist now, right? And then also there's a substantial change when the being dies, right? So when you have a chicken, right, and we get hungry and we chop off its head, right, then that's a kind of substantial change because there's something about the form of the chicken that is changing such that it's no longer a chicken. right? So for Aristotle, when it comes to living beings, the property of life kind of makes it what it is. So when it loses that property of life, it's no longer what it is. So when we say the word dead chicken, it's not even for Aristotle, strictly speaking, correct, because that thing's not a chicken anymore in virtue of being dead. So substantial changes are when new things come into existence or things that previously existed go out of existence. And then he distinguishes substantial changes from accidental changes. And accidental changes are changes that do not make something come into or out of existence. So, for example, suppose we have a white chicken, right? And I paint it green, right? We would say that it's changed, right? It's a different color, but that's an accidental change because my painting it green did not make anything come into or out of existence. Rather, we would say that, look, it's still the same chicken, just slightly different. And we could do this for any number of changes, changes in position, right? So, for example, me, um, one accidental change is when I have my hand lowered and I raise my hand, I'm changing. But according to Aristotle, that's an accidental change. And that doesn't change who I am. That doesn't bring anything into or out of existence. Rather, that is an accidental change. Okay, so here Aristotle is distinguishing between two different kinds of changes, substantial and accidental, and he can use that to say, look, when there are substantial changes, new things are brought into existence, old things are taken out of existence, right? But when we have accidental changes, there is no new thing brought into existence. And using this distinction, he provides an answer to what we've been talking about as the problem of change.